I think one of the biggest challenges in mobilizing human resources is aligning individual purpose to organizational purpose. So why am I here? Why am I working in this organization? And then what is the organization trying to achieve? So communicating that clearly, what the organizational purpose is, and also spending enough time hiring for that alignment, then spending time exploring that alignment continuously because that also might change, and breaking down that organizational purpose into clear goals, milestones, KPIs, so that they can align very transparently and concretely to individual goals. That happens, that creates a lot of intrinsic motivation, but I don't think as organizations we spend enough time doing that right now. See, first of all, it's the debate around what the cultural values of an organization should be is a very important one. So we should spend enough time upfront having that debate, because especially if working cross generationally, then what is your identity going to be as an organization is very important to explore, and then go back and keep exploring that every few years, so that you can really have an organization and a set of team members and members who are true to that value and vice versa. So the first step is to say how do you set those values up, and that is the first step. And then secondly, then how do you operationalize those values in your policies, in your processes, in your and make them more tangible and concrete by giving examples. Like if you say transparency is a value, so what are things that one would do that would make us look like we're not transparent? Or what are things one would do that make us look like we are transparent, right? As an example. So if you do A, B, C, that means you're upholding our values. And if you do X, Y, Z, that means you're not upholding our values. And then how do you celebrate success? How do you actually create channels, create communication around individuals and teams that are upholding values in an exceptional way? So that creates sort of a positive momentum around this. So I think that's the three things: setting the values in a very transparent, open discourse, then revisiting them, operationalizing them, and then celebrating successes around them. I prefer creating leaders any day. I think because the cultural and people alignment that happens with longevity is immense, and that value can't be bought by. And sometimes you have to bring in people laterally because that's what the organization needs. But if you're asking for a preference, then I would always prefer creating leaders, because there's a lot of cultural alignment that has already happened. There's a lot of values alignment that's already happened, and organizational knowledge and systems are sort of imbibed already, and then that can be a natural progression. It also motivates people to work towards that growth. I mean, if you continuously see people just being hired laterally, that also demotivates some very, very smart, exceptional leaders within the organization. So my preference always is to put that effort in, put that time in, to give context, to give feedback, to spend one-on-one time to actually create leaders, and I really enjoy that work as well. So. See, I am a psychiatrist, so I'll always be biased to say that mental health is a huge key priority, and actually without mental health, you can't have health at all. So there are a lot of global sort of slogans around no health without mental health. And so you actually can't have overall physical or health or well-being if your mental health is not working. If your brain is not working well, if your mind is not working well, then you can't sort of optimize the rest of your ecosystem physically, emotionally, relationally, basically. So it's very important that it works. Now, we know that it gets deprioritized a lot because it's not obvious. Like when you break a leg, it's very obvious that you've broken a leg. But when you're not feeling well, you're not feeling depressed or anxious, it's not always obvious what is going wrong. So the first step is awareness building, as to recognizing the and recognizing and creating self-awareness that this might not be working. And then after that, having the resources and avenues to address that as proactively as one would address mental health. Right? In India especially, it takes people almost sometimes 5 to 6 years from first experiencing symptoms to going and seeing somebody for the mental health support. Right? And think of that, that's crazy. Right? Imagine if you broke a leg and you didn't go see somebody for 6 years. This is no different to that. So it's really, really important that we focus on our mental health, because without that you can't have overall health and well-being. I think employment can create an avenue for intellectual and emotional growth as well. Like how do you grow as an individual, professionally, personally, interpersonally, is something that an organization can really give you. Right? So I think those things you mentioned around security are a bare minimum, but I do think that great organizations go way beyond that in developing personalities and individuals across the intellectual, emotional, interpersonal spectrum. So I do think that developing structures and programs within the organizations that enable that to happen, enable leaders to shine, enable people to become leaders, adds a lot more value to an individual's life beyond just the bare minimum, which is providing the different types of securities you talked about.